attached. Good morning. Great to see you again.
Nice to see you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Perez, for being here today. I've been listening to the comments made already, and having read a lot of the material about this with a great deal of interest. This, I will tell you, is not an area of expertise for me, but my husband and I discuss these things a lot. He generally handles our investments for us with a little bit of input from me. And I'm really interested in this issue of best interest contracts. And I know in many cases you can get advice that people think is in the best interest. I know my husband over the year has invested money in areas where he thought there'd be a great return. And yet something happens outside his ability to control it. It happens all the time in investments. You invest in one thing and the market's going up, and all of a sudden a new technology comes along or some substitute for that product, and your investment's not worth as much. You know, best interest, it seems to me, is in the eye of the beholder. But I want to ask you a quick question about this. If I talk to somebody, a financial professional, to help me open an IRA, why do I need to sign a contract before we can even have a conversation? Do you think that kind of requirement is going to intimidate the new investors that we need to get into the market and ultimately discourage them from saving? You know, signing a contract for the average person is a big deal.
The short answer is you don't have to sign a contract before you have a conversation, and we understand that the proposed rule, and we've, in part of our feedback that we've heard, this issue has come up with some frequency, and there have been concerns raised about the timing of when the contract requirement would go into place. And so your question is a perfect example of the issue of how do we operationalize this, because we have a shared goal in making sure that you can go out and get access to advice, shop around. I want to know what you're telling me, and I want to know what you're telling me, and I want to make an informed choice. Just like if I buy a car or I buy a refrigerator, I want to do some comparison shopping, and our goal is to make sure that that comparison shopping is facilitated. So we've heard that, and that's an issue that I'm confident are going to clarify, because we want to encourage shopping. We want to encourage informed consumers, and there's a lot that you can go to now and not have a contract. You can go and see somebody and talk about asset allocation. You know, what should my asset allocation be? You can look at interactive modeling and plug in a number of different assumptions, and you don't need a contract. That's all part of the shopping. The most important part I've learned from talking to folks in the industry about the conversations is the asset allocation conversation. You know, what's your risk tolerance threshold? What do you want to, and my wife and I have different risk tolerance thresholds in this, and we learned that during the course of meeting with our financial planner. And those are the things we want to facilitate, and those don't require a contract to have those conversations.
Well, one of the things it sounds to me like in terms of best interest is that this is going to be a full employment regulation for trial lawyers, because who decides what that best interest is going to have to ultimately be decided. One more question. Are you concerned at all that long-standing positive relationships between investors and advisors will be disrupted if they're forced to comply with a host of new mandates?
I am not concerned, because everybody that I have spoken to has said that I put my customers' best interest first. I haven't met anybody who says they haven't. And so what we're trying to do is operationalize and memorialize that. And as it relates to your question
if they are already doing that, then why do we need to have a host of new rules and regulations?
Because we're trusting and verifying. Because I'm sure that when the TOEFLs went in, they thought they were getting advice that was in their best interest. But there is a structural problem here. And it's not about bad actors as much as it's about the fact that when you have a suitability standard, there are 5 different products that are suitable, but many of those products gets you a better commission, and it's completely appropriate for you to steer someone to a product that gives you a better commission and does so at the expense of the consumer. I think that that's not in the best interest of the consumer, and so that's why we're trying to change it. And by the way, there's a substantial percentage of folks who are already fiduciaries. They have not, there's no evidence of a litigation boom with folks who are already fiduciaries. And we also have a provision in the rule, for your information, that allows a best interest contract to have a mandatory arbitration clause for individual claims. So a firm can put that in if they want, and it was designed to get at the concern that you addressed.
The gentlelady's time has expired. Mr. Pocan.